want to mention there is a law that was passed recently that was spurred by these cases. It's basically forfeiture by wrongdoing, where we're going to make a motion to admit statements made by Kathleen Savio in the trial. These would be admitted as substantive evidence as an exception to the hearsay rule. It's a significant step forward in the prosecution of these types of cases, and we look forward to the challenge.
Okay, Joel, this is what I think he's talking about, that Kathleen Savio told her sister, Sue Doman, if anything happens to me, Drew killed me. And she also wrote a letter to the prosecutor during the divorce dispute with Drew. He will do anything to get custody, even kill me.
Right.
And that will now come in potentially to the murder trial under the new Illinois law?
Well, it's very interesting what the State's Attorney Glasgow just said. He didn't really refer to the he did refer to the statute, but he said that the concept for getting it in is called forfeiture by wrongdoing, which is a very recent U.S. Supreme Court decision on that, giving up your right to confront witnesses because of wrongdoing. If that's the case, then I'm very confident that we'll be able to keep that letter out, because that letter was written to law enforcement, and you have an absolute right. You can't right to confront the witness in that type of situation where they've given a statement to law enforcement.
Right. In other words, every defendant has a constitutional right in the U.S. Constitution to confront witnesses against him.
Absolutely.
And this is an attempt to change that. I don't know whether state law can change the U.S. Constitution. Generally not. But this was passed November 2008, so just a few months ago. Was this law passed specifically because of Drew Peterson?
Well, if we can show that it was, then it's against the Illinois state constitution. Because
ex post facto.
Well, yeah, and you cannot. We have another constitutional rule that you cannot pass a law that's just related to one person or one issue. It either has to apply to everybody, and if you pass a specific law towards one issue.
Well, this would apply to everyone. I mean, his name is not in it. But the question is, was he the motivating force?
Exactly. And if we can show that specifically he was the motivating force, that's another constitutional challenge. There's going to be a lot of litigation and perhaps even appellate court decisions on this issue before we get to trial.
So yesterday we also heard from law enforcement at a press conference, Joel, and they said essentially, we've got thousands of pages of documents. We've been investigating this for 18 months. An unprecedented amount of law enforcement has been working on this case. Are you going to be assembling a dream team to defend Drew Peterson?
Well, we're going to have myself and Mr. Andrew Abood and my partner Remo Day, and obviously a lot of clerical and paralegal help to go through all those documents, and the three of us will be able to put on as good a defense as anybody can get anywhere in the United States.
Kathleen Savio's remains were exhumed after Stacey Peterson went missing, and that new autopsy became a significant factor, and we heard yesterday that that was one of the reasons for this indictment, that new autopsy led to it being called a homicide and ultimately to Drew being called a suspect, and now he's a criminal defendant in that case. What are you going to have on the forensic side to help Drew?
We're going to have Dr. Cyril Weck, who's already looked at the first autopsy, examine this second autopsy, and also look at any physical evidence that they've probably stored, slides, fluids, and such, and get his opinion. And he initially has already looked at the first autopsy and said that he believed that autopsy looked like an accident. He didn't see anything in there that necessarily said to him it was a homicide. And that was the autopsy that was done, almost immediately after the death. We're talking about the second autopsy taken 4 years later, where a body had substantially deteriorated. So we're going to vigorously question whether or not there has even been a homicide.
So it may come down to a battle of the experts.